So here we're using the factor diamond method. You'll notice for this polynomial we have three terms. Our goal is to get this middle term here, and we're going to split it into two different terms. In order to do so, we need to think of two numbers, one on the left and one on the right, where when we multiply, we get negative 21, and when we add these two numbers, we get positive 1. So in class, we went over that these two numbers are 5 and negative 4. So if I do 5 times negative 4, so 5 times negative 4, I get negative 20. And if I do 5 plus negative 4, I get positive 1. So you may ask, what if I did it the other way? I got negative 4 here and 5 here. That's totally fine because negative 4 times 5 is still negative 20 and negative 4 plus 5 is still positive 1. So why did we want these two numbers? These two numbers represent how we're going to break this x up. So we have negative 4 and 5. So I can represent this as negative 4x and then positive 5x. So this x got broken up into these two terms. Now, you might wonder, Miss So, which one goes on the left and which one goes on the right, and does it matter? The answer to that question is yes, it does matter. So eventually, we're going to want to group up the, let me just make that a little bit smaller. We're going to want to group up these two and group up these two. So you'll notice we have a 5 here and we have a 4 here. So looking at our two terms, it might actually be better if I switch them around. So if I did plus 5x here and negative 4x here. And now you'll notice that later we're going to find the GCF of these two terms and the GCF of these two terms, and you'll realize that it'll be nicer to have the 5's together and then to have the 4's together. So when you do the factor diamond, you can choose whichever order you want, but when they eventually go back into the polynomial function, you want to be mindful of which terms you want to match up together. So that's why we wanted to use the factor diamond to figure out that the two numbers were negative 4 and 5, and then you want to place them back in here. So we're going to first start with, we're going to group these two terms and these two terms together. You'll realize we have a total of 4 terms, so we can group them 2 and 2. So now looking at this term, I want you to find the greatest common factor. So when I just look at the numbers, the greatest common factor is 5. And then when I look at the variables, the greatest one they have in common is a power of 1. So it's just x. Then whatever I have remaining, I'm going to leave it in the parentheses. So my first term, I have x left, plus, I had 5x originally. If I divide 5x out, I just get 1 left. And in the same way, I'm going to do the same for this group. So I want to find the GCF. So I'm looking at the number, and I see that my first term has a negative, so I do want to get rid of that. So let's factor out a total of negative 4. Then my first term, I have x remaining. I have negative 4 here, and I'm factoring out negative 4, which means I have positive 1 left, equals 0. And then from here, I'm going to look at this polynomial as a whole, and you'll notice that we have an expression they have in common, x plus 1 and x plus 1 they have in common. So within the blue group, I have an x plus 1, and within the purple group, I have an x plus 1. So what I'm going to do is factor out the x plus 1 because they have both of that in common. So I'm finding the GCF again, and it's x plus 1. Once I take out x plus 1, what's remaining? So I'm going to just keep the color so we see it. We have 5x remaining, and we have minus 4 remaining. And now you'll realize that from my original polynomial, I was able to factor it into one expression multiplied by another expression. So I could technically put a multiplication symbol just to show you that I have an expression multiplied by an expression. And then from here, if you look at each of these two groups, I don't have a GCF to factor anymore. This is the farthest I can go. This is my factored form. So if I were to start from the way beginning and just summarize, step 1, I used the factor diamond. Why did I use the factor diamond? I wanted to figure out how to break up this middle term into two separate terms. And I wanted to figure out what those numbers were. The moment I figure out what these numbers are, step 2, I rewrite the middle term using two terms from the original polynomial. So x is now represented as 5x minus 4x. That's my step 2. My step 3 would be I am now grouping. So I'm looking at my group on the left and group on the right, and then I'm factoring my GCF. So there's my step 3, where I'm grouping into two different groups and finding the GCF for each of them. My step 4 is that after I group them, I should have an expression as a GCF that I can factor out. So you'll notice here I'm doing GCF here, GCF here. I'm doing GCF twice. This step number 3, I'm finding the GCF of each group. And the fourth step, GCF, is I'm finding an expression that both of these groups have in common, which is x plus 1.